again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And we're into the breach once more, taping a Thursday before our usual Monday air. And the stuff that's going to be percolating in the news is who knows, because it's such a wild post-Helsinki whatever. But because things are so disruptive, I think maybe what we'll try to do, Bob, is sort of take a step back and see if we can put some kind of perspective on this, because as usual, history is repeating itself, as it usually does.
And we're at this point overwhelmed by just the volume of news. I mean, so try to keep the show a little bit timely. We have to actually step back from that and try to, not walk it back, but just take a little time to analyze.
Put some perspective.
What will still be lively by the time this airs on Monday.
Stories that are still going to be in the news. But economic disruption, no jobs, low-paying jobs, bleak future. That's what gave the fascism and the rise of Hitler and Mussolini in Europe in the 1930s, right? So what do we have here? Economic disruption, deep recession, rampant income inequality, right? So what did that lead to? Donald Trump, a questionable Donald Trump election in 2016, right? But we'll double back on that Trump Manchurian candidate election, so we don't spend the whole show.
We can easily blow the whole show.
That's
on
right. On what people have been calling outrageous treasonous fealty to Putin in Helsinki, and that's puerile, futile attempts to quote correct it.
Right, and just to limit my comment, I'll just say that just listening to report after report of Republicans and Democrats in their reactions to what he said in Helsinki, and just the sheer volume of the news coming out of it, and how people were insulted, it's just overwhelming. And it's just too bad we don't have time to.
No, we might try to put it into some kind of perspective at the end of the show, but we will not start the show with that craziness. But what I want to start the show with, though, is the kind of history repeating itself stuff that basically we're seeing, and we're not the only ones. Other people have been actually doing this, but the consequences right now for our country is this rise of xenophobia and anti-immigrant nativist policies that's being prosecuted and practiced by our government.
All of a sudden it feels okay to say certain things that we know are not okay, things that we thought we got rid of with the 1960s civil rights movements, but here again, under this new administration, under the tone that he set himself, people suddenly feel that it's okay to get away with certain types of truly offensive speech. And it's like, well, the president is mumbling these things, so why can't I? And that's a dangerous, dangerous road we're on. Not heading for, but we're on that road now.
Yeah, he's not mumbling them, he's shouting them from the rooftops.
You're right.
With those same lies and the fear-mongering that was used to justify the internment of the Japanese during World War II, we're getting those same kinds of lies and fear-mongering and nativist behavior. We're ripping families apart who are seeking asylum at the border, and when the judge says, no, you can't do that, they have no policies to put these families together again. But that xenophobia that drove them to come up with that policy is basically what seems to be waving across the country. There was a Pro-Publica story. There are a couple of Pro-Publica stories.
They do good research.
I
mean, their research is vetted. They're not. The administration would be the first to call this fake news, but we know Pro-Publica.
Yeah, they're a nonprofit. They've been working with seasoned journalists, and whatever the foundation is that's backing them, it's a combination of not-for-profit money being poured in to try to do good citizen journalism, just because newspapers and television stations aren't really doing deep, in-depth stuff like they used to in the old days.
Right.
So there were two Pro-Publica stories for sure that I wanted to mention.
That we can. Do you want to start with the intolerance or the?
Why don't we start with that intolerance one? Because we're talking about xenophobia and nativist stuff. The headline anyway of the Pro-Publica thing, and the byline is Rohima Nasa.
Yes.
In New York, intolerance has become routine. Subheadline, a Human Rights Commission report says almost 40% of Muslim, Jewish, and Sikh residents of the city surveyed had experienced some kind of harassment. And this is New York, folks. This is supposedly one of the most open, tolerant cities in the 50 United States.
Right.
But because the climate has gotten this bad, even in this city, the rise of intolerance is increasing.
I spend a lot of time going to meetings in Times Square, and it used to be that the people you heard saying these intolerant things were the tourists who aren't used to this level of diversity. They would see somebody like a Hasidic Jew, they would stop and stare as if he wasn't a normal person, but someone that you can pick out and stare at.
Yeah.
But now we get this xenophobia, this type of hate speech from our locals, because all of a sudden they think it's okay. And that's, I guess, part of what this study
the new Trump era,
and what this this study is driving at. I mean, 40% is bad.
Yeah, that's a huge increase from just a few years ago.
I mean, I'll just pull out this one quote. Some 38% of those surveyed said they had been verbally harassed or taunted because of their race or faith. Nearly 10% said they had been the victim of an actual physical assault, and 10% is way too high. I mean, that's 1 out of 10. Please have a, and a similar percentage of those surveyed had said they had seen their property vandalized or otherwise defaced.
And the interesting thing is, to put it in perspective, because I still subscribe to the New York Times on the weekends, so that old-fashioned wise I can get a paper in my hand and I can look at things and I can turn the page, because I get tired of looking at a computer screen all the time, folks. And there was a very interesting thing, which reminded me that it's good to put this stuff in perspective. But in their opinion Sunday review section, which was the previous Sunday, the headline was "When History Repeats," and the byline really is the former chief book critic for the New York Times, the Sunday Times Book Review. Her chief book critic was a Japanese lady by the name of Michiko Kakutani. And I've read a number of her reviews on different books. But the gist of the matter is, in 1942, my mother's family was sent to the Utah desert based on lies and fear-mongering.
Wow.
And basically, her parents, and there are photos in here of them in a Utah internment camp, and the lies were these were fifth column people who were going to bring down the United States, even though they were bona fide citizens who had lived here a couple of generations.
And would happily defend this country.
In fact, the most decorated unit in World War II. The most decorated, folk. I can speak this off the top of my head because we've been down this road before with the Nisei Japanese unit that fought in Europe. They were the most decorated, highly decorated unit of the entire U.S. Army. Okay? So the canard about them being fifth columnists and being unpatriotic and would be enemies of the country was just based on exactly what she said, just lies and fear mongering.
And looking at, we've all seen the same videos of the kids on cots with these blankets that look like aluminum foil. They were basically, I know they're heat blankets. They're supposed to hold in the heat pretty well. But they're behind chain link fencing, basically looking like they're in cages. And they're separated from their parents. I've been to summer camp. That was no summer camp. They can't put that blanket description over what I saw.
I forgot who came up with that bit about, it's just like some summer camp. It was one of those Fox commentators, if I remember correctly. I can't quote which one, but trust me, my memory says it was Fox.
but seeing the first image of that just made it shook me, and it did obviously bring up comparisons to that, to the internment.
We early on, when they first started that, we came flat right out and said that's a crime against humanity. Okay, that's just what you're doing to families and young kids is truly abhorrent and should not be allowed. And guess what? There is a Diversity Inc. story, I believe. Let's see if I can call it up. Basically, which talks about the fact that, interestingly enough, here's the headline: Judge asked to create mental health fund for migrant children. The ACLU, which has won a number of suits against this policy, now said the government, quote, must establish a fund to pay for professional mental health counseling, which will be used to treat children who are suffering from severe trauma as a result of their forcible separation from their parents, end quote. And so the ACLU is not just going after the illegality and the breakdown in constitutional safeguards that the Trump administration, because these immigrants have the same jurisprudence rights as American citizens once they present themselves for asylum. I talked to an immigration lawyer and she confirmed that. But they're going after the government for not just being unable to reunite these people, but they say, you're causing severe trauma. You need to fix that. And I agree with them.
I do.
I totally agree with them.
Yeah, you look at any parent that for any reason is separated from a child and you know there's trauma. I mean, and in the child and in the parent, you know there's going to, you know, they usually don't get any kind of treatment from hospitals, you know, for their mental state. But you know that, you know, they've been mentally injured. It's just astounding. I don't know, for some reason the movie Sophie's Choice comes to mind, the way her children were ripped from her at that, you know, obviously they meant that was going to be a permanent separation. She, you know, there was no chance of her getting that kid back in the movie.
Well, there's a possibility this is a permanent separation because this government doesn't even have records of who belonged to whom so far.
Now, what kills me about some of the descriptions, some of the senators are saying, well, we can't put them back together because we don't know if these are their actual children. And for all the blended families we have in this country living here, if you give families DNA tests, you'll find that lots of children aren't exactly children of the father they're being raised by.
There were uncles and aunts that they were coming to. There were people who were bringing them who weren't their actual parents.
That seems so irrelevant. Blood relation, if you're taking for a child, that's your kid.
It's just ridiculous paper excuses because they screwed up and didn't document who belonged to whom. They haven't a clue. That's the problem.
That's I don't want to say sad because that's one of our president's words that he uses too often.
Well, he doesn't know sad. That is diabolical. That is inhumane.
What I liked about the judge's decision was that he told the government that this is not a goal. This is what you must do. This is not an aspirational goal. That's how he put it. To get the parents and the kids together at your leisure. No, you need to be doing it right now. And there's going to be a problem. I don't know what redress he can, you know. If he can toss officials, well, he can, but he's not going to toss officials in federal prison. But it has to be done now.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the follow-up is, you know, because these people, they're coming up with all kinds of excuses. Oh, they're criminals, some of them are criminals, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, then find the next relative that's here to reunite them with. You weren't supposed to take them away from them to begin with.
You can continue your process, but find that family member and, you know, just get that done. Just get them out from behind the cages. And that's just distressing for me to look at.
It's ridiculous. So what were the other tied to this particular governmental debacle that another self-inflicted Donald Trump wound to the country, because he did not have to do this, but he chose to and mandated that Jeff Sessions do this.
Yes.
So, but yeah, there was another
this
Pro-Publica story about a baby.
A baby was separated from her uncle at the border. A baby was separated from her uncle at the border. 3 months later, her mother is still trying to get her back. Just breathtaking examples of how, you know, the case of Leah Ferreira Amaya shows the extensive vetting immigrant families must submit to in order to retrieve their children from U.S. custody, even if it means putting themselves at risk for deportation. Now, I mean, you can just imagine the family stresses that go into that process and to that procedure. I mean, you're one way the kid is safe, but you're gone. And the other way, it just doesn't work out well for you. But this case comes out of 15. I'll just read. Should I just read the lead?
Sure.
Just to put it in. Cindy Karina Ferreira Amaya opened her mouth, and a gloved hand gave each cheek a perfunctory brush with a cotton swab. 15 seconds, and the $429 DNA test she'd paid for was over. Eso es todo, the lab technician said. That was it. And that's basically the latest indignity. And anyway,
she had to pay for the DNA test.
I know DNA tests. They don't supposed to cost $429.
But she had to pay.
She had to pay for it. Yeah. Okay. I've been at in my tech coverage. I cover DNA testing. It's becoming a big thing because they have apps that can analyze your DNA and whatnot. They don't cost $400. It's just astounding.
What you're saying is, in the normal course of business, they shouldn't cost $400, but because the federal government now has this crazy thing in place, some corporate entities decide they're going to rip off the federal taxpayer by charging these people, and so since the federal taxpayers are not going to foot the bill because the federal government are trying to discourage people, they're making these asylum seekers pay the $425 themselves.
That's
okay.
Yeah.
So these people are caught, rock in a hard place.
And these are not people traveling here with money. So
no,
it's
inhumane. It's diabolical. It's however many different adjectives and adverbs and descriptive phrases you want to come up with, but it is definitely. Well, put it this way. St. Paul would not have called it charitable.
Right, not by a long distance.
He
would have looked south towards another individual.
I am not happy with that. But within the context of putting things in perspective, the other story that, of course, got knocked off the front burner because of Donald Trump's ridiculous Helsinki fealty and obeisance and debasement to Vladimir Putin. And I'm not sure I'm the first person to use all those words, but I might be the first person to use them all in one sentence.
Okay.
but the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh, he's a judge already because I think he's on the appellate.
He's a federal
appeals bench in D.C. That is a crucial story that basically we need to weigh in on. And I know, Bob, you've got some stuff either from the NAACP or some other sources that speaks to how many different levels of hurt Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court could cause this country. I know at the top of it there's the women fearful of Roe versus Wade being turned back.
Right.
Just because Donald Trump says that he fulfills his campaign promises, and he promised to put somebody on the bench that would overturn Roe v. Wade. So I expect this judge, who actually paid fealty and obeisance to Donald Trump when he was nominated.
Absolutely.
If I could call up that clip, I'd call it up. It was so obsequious and so fawning, it was sickening, but hopefully some of you have seen it. But Kavanaugh is truly someone that, oh wait, I remember, while you're looking
yes,
online,
it's coming up in 1 second.
There is, and same Sunday Review, Ari Berman, who is a contributor to a number of on-cable news shows, but he's a senior reporter for Mother Jones, Ari, A-R-I-B-E-R-M-A-N, and the author of Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America. So this basically is a guy who's been looking at this issue. This is one of the underreported stories because Kavanaugh is largely concerned with voter suppression, his nomination.
Right.
And Ari Berman is right on top. It says about to get harder to vote. Middle line, Kavanaugh's confirmation would spell doom for civil rights. It's very interesting. In late 2011, the Obama administration blocked a South Carolina law that required voters to show photo ID before casting their ballots. finding that it could disenfranchise tens of thousands of minority voters who were more likely than whites to lack such IDs. But when South Carolina asked a federal court in Washington to approve the law, Brett Kavanaugh wrote the opinion upholding it.
Okay.
So
yeah.
these folks who have studied this guy, now this is on voting rights.
Right.
Never mind Roe v. Wade. This is voting rights. His headline in this particular op-ed for the New York Times is, "It's about to get harder to vote if this guy gets nominated." And this is just one opinion piece, but the NAACP had a whole thing. Yeah, you got the NAACP thing there, right?
And this comes from Diversity Inc., another website which I have a great faith in. They do their vetting, they do their proper reporting. This is the headline, NAACP, Brett Kavanaugh is a dangerous ideologue. Over and over again, he has ruled against civil rights, workers' rights, consumer rights, and women's rights, said America's most recognized civil rights organization. This is echoed later in the story. This is the NAACP, but it's echoed later in the story by the National Urban League, and it's echoed by a couple other organizations. His record has proven to be support employers over unions, just like you said, supporting voter ID regulations. And well, here's the ACLU, the Human Rights Campaign, and the Council on American Islamic Rights all issued statements voicing their concern over Kavanaugh as well. So they're not worried about what he might do. They're reporting on what he has done.
Already done.
And it's troubling.
Boy, is it ever. So the interesting thing is this is a known entity. There is no doubt about how far to the right this guy is. But one of the key things that a lot of people are incensed about is the fact that this is the guy who worked for Kenneth Starr when they were trying to do that whole Whitewater thing and the special prosecutor. And he pulled out tooth and nail to try to make sure he prosecuted Bill Clinton all the way to the hilt.
Yes.
And then he went to work in the G.W. Bush White House as one of their in-house counsels. And all of a sudden he had this great opinion piece. I think he wrote it for some law journal, I'm not sure which one, where he says, oh, no, we can't be even trying to try a president. We can't even let him have to sit for any legal deposition or anything because it would be too burdensome on the chief executive.
Right.
So while he was over here as a prosecutor, he wanted to go after any president that was sitting in the White House, particularly a Democratic president. After he started working for a Republican president, George W. Bush, and all of a sudden, no, we cannot, and published opinion, written in a huge piece.
He was basically laying the bricks for his future.
Well, the bottom line is, I think that was one of the things that your sitting current White House occupant read that opinion and says, oh, this is my guy, let me appoint him. Okay.
Well, first of all, I don't think Trump reads anything.
Somebody read it for him.
That's what I mean.
And brought it to his attention.
Yes. And he was basically given a tray of names with the Republican leadership. These are the folks we would like you to look at. And whatever cursory examination he made, I'm sure he had all sorts of people whispering in his ear, no, that's not what we want. No. Well, she's a woman. We might not be ready for that. I can imagine they said that. And he had a lot of help with this decision, but this is the guy they wanted. But I like to think about the news that isn't happening as an indication as to what is happening. A lot of Republicans used to have these town hall meetings to talk about what's going on in their communities. Right. Look at what's not happening right now. They're not one of them wants to have a town hall meeting right now because the blowback from the public at this moment is such that it would be a disaster for most, except maybe for John McCain. Yeah, well, are they out on recess right now? I mean, I know it's the middle of the summer. Well, then, they're definitely not working. They have the time for the local. So they out on recess. So maybe it may turn out to at some point the people's voice is going to have to be heard. Yes, at some point. Right. At least in November, something's going to happen. And let's see, we have 3 minutes left.
We've got about 3 minutes. We did Kavanaugh.
Yes.
So I guess we could circle back and wrap up our show. We did say we would circle back to the great orange balloon and his European trip. First he insulted the German chancellor.
Yes.
Then he insulted the Prime Minister of Britain.
Then he practically stepped on the Queen. Well, on the way,
turned his back to the Queen.
Yeah, that was
forgot
before.
all
That was before.
protocol.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he basically bowed down and kissed Vladimir Putin's ass in public at a press conference.
Yes.
Okay.
We can say that with no.
It was there for everybody to see. They come out of this closed door meeting, and Putin comes bounding out, jumps up on the thing. This guy walks out like the big elephant, orange buffoon that he was, and then proceed to throw our intelligence community under the bus.
Yes.
Throw the country under the bus to the point where a former CIA called it treasonous. John McCain totally got up on his hind legs and castigated him. Everybody else castigated him. And then he tried to walk it back with I forgot to say a not. I misspoke with a double down.
Right.
Some stupid crap.
And with about a minute left, I mean, I was just appalled. I mean, I was just appalled at what's, just the way that went off. And I had so many incoming. I heard from so many of my journalist friends that morning, like, did you see that? Did you hear that? Can you believe that?
Oh, we forgot to tell you folks, though, that being black in America, we actually had a positive spin because there was a report that talked about the fact that despite all the negativity that keeps being published and all the negative episodes of being black in America, there's a report out that talks about how well black men are doing in the United States of America. I think it was published by Philadelphia Magazine or one of those outlets.
Right, and it had a lot to say about how there were more blacks in the middle class since the 1960s.
Yep. And that the upward trend is upward and is coming out of poverty, moving into the middle class, and it's a much more optimistic picture than has been painted. So that's one of the positive being black in America stories that we needed to bring to your attention.
And I like the little nugget about being in the military had a benefit. So I thought that was a
build
cool.
Stable families.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess we're about out of time.
Yes.
This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And we'll hopefully catch you the next time. Catch us on YouTube
at Media Watch EVT and on Twitter at the same name.